There's a shelf you've never seen inside almost every serious bar in the country. It's not the back bar. It's not the rail. It's not the premium shelf with the upcharge bottles, facing out under the lighting. It's the shelf behind the shelf, the spot under the counter, inside the speed rack, behind the ice bin, where bartenders keep the bottles they actually want to drink, the ones that never get a menu listing, never get recommended to a table, and never get poured unless the person asking already knows to ask. And here's what makes that shelf worth understanding. Every bottle on it is there because someone who tastes spirits for a living decided it was too good to share with strangers. That's not a small thing. That's the most honest recommendation in the building, and it's being made silently to nobody. Every single night you're sitting on the other side of the bar. 7 bottles your bartender is hiding from you and pouring for himself. Number 7. Before we get into specific bottles, I want to explain something that every bartender I spoke to said in one form or another, because it reframes everything that follows. A bar menu is not a list of what's good. It's a list of what sells, what the rep pushed hardest, what the distributor offered the best deal on, and what photographs well enough to justify a cocktail program. Those 4 things occasionally overlap with quality. They're not the same as quality. The bottles behind the counter, the ones that never make the menu, are almost always there for one reason. The bartender bought them with their own money, or found them through a channel that had nothing to do with the standard distributor relationship, and they have no interest in sharing them with a table that won't appreciate them. That last part is the one that should irritate you, because you might appreciate them, you just were never given the chance. Weller Special Reserve. This is the entry-level bottle in the Weller Wheated Bourbon lineup. The same mash bill as Pappy Van Winkle, produced at Buffalo Trace, and the most accessible point of entry into a family of whiskeys that has become almost impossible to find at retail. Behind bars, it exists in a different reality. Accounts with strong distributor relationships receive allocation. Bartenders know which accounts have it, and Weller Special Reserve, when it's behind a bar at all, rarely makes the cocktail menu because it moves too fast among staff and regulars before it ever needs to be listed publicly. A bar manager told me directly, "We don't put Weller on the menu because the moment we do, we're out in a week and we can't replace it. So we keep it off the menu, we pour it for the people who ask by name, and we protect the bottle." That policy exists at bars across the country. The bottle is there. You just have to know to ask. Number 6. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is released 3 times a year in batches, each with a different proof and a slightly different flavor profile depending on the barrel selected. Among bourbon enthusiasts, it's considered one of the most consistently excellent high-proof bourbons at its price point. Among bartenders, it occupies a specific and unusual position. It's too good to mix and too interesting to waste on someone who's going to drown it in a Coke. That's not snobbery. That's resource management. A bartender working a busy Saturday night does not want to watch a 120 proof Elijah Craig disappear into a well whiskey cocktail ordered by someone who would have been equally happy with the house bourbon. So they keep it off the menu, they reserve it for the end of service, and they pour it for themselves and the regulars who sit at the bar and talk about what's in the glass. The beverage director I spoke to called it the bartender's reward system. You work a 9-hour shift. You deal with everything that comes with that. At the end of it, you pour yourself 2 fingers of something excellent and you sit with it. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is at a significant number of bars. That's something excellent. The menu never sees it. Number 5. This one surprised me most in terms of where it showed up. Lustau East India Solera Sherry. Not a whiskey, not a bourbon, a sherry. And the fact that it appears on this list says something important about the gap between what gets marketed to consumers and what the most knowledgeable people behind a bar are actually drinking. Lustau East India Solera is a blended sherry combining Oloroso and Pedro Ximénez, bottled at 20%, and it is one of the most complex and satisfying things you can pour into a glass at any price point. It smells like dried fruit and dark chocolate and something faintly oxidized and ancient. It tastes like a dessert made by someone who understood restraint. Every bartender I spoke to who mentioned sherry mentioned Lustau, and every single one of them said the same thing. Customers don't order sherry because they think they don't like sherry. They don't like sherry because every sherry they've been served in their life was served wrong. Wrong glass, wrong temperature, wrong context. Usually the cheapest bottle in the house poured as an afterthought. A bartender at a high-volume program told me, "I keep this behind the bar because when I find a customer who's genuinely curious curious, I pour them this and it changes their night. But I can't put it on the menu because 90% of the people who'd order it from a menu don't know what they're ordering, and I'd spend the whole night explaining it and sending it back. So it stays behind the counter. For the curious, for the regulars, for the end of the shift when the bar quiets down and the good glasses come out. Number 4. Compass Box. Peat Monster. Compass Box is a Scottish independent blending company that operates entirely outside the traditional distillery model. They buy casks from existing distilleries, blend them according to their own vision, and bottle the results under their own label with no legacy infrastructure, no heritage marketing, and no famous postcode to hide behind. Peat Monster is their heavily peated expression, blending malt whiskies from Cowal Illa and Ardmore into something that delivers serious smoke without the premium Islay price tag. Behind bars, it fills a specific gap. It converts customers who think they don't like peated whiskey. Approachable enough to serve as an introduction, complex enough to satisfy someone who already loves Laphroaig. Here's what should bother you about this one. Compass Box is, by any measure, producing some of the most interesting Scotch whiskey available today. Their blends regularly outperform single malts at twice the price in blind tastings run by some of the most credentialed palates in the industry. And yet you will almost never see them featured on a bar menu. Not because bars don't stock them, but because the distributor incentive structure overwhelmingly favors heritage brands with marketing budgets. Reps push what they're paid to push. Menus list what reps push. Compass Box doesn't have the infrastructure to compete in that game. So it ends up behind the counter, where the bartender who found it keeps it for himself, for the customers he trusts, and for the moments when he wants to pour something that earned its place in the glass on merit alone. If this is making you think differently about how you order at a bar, subscribe before you keep going, because the follow-up to this video goes inside the actual ordering conversation, specifically what to say to a bartender to get them to reach for the bottles they'd never tell a stranger about. That one is practical, in a way this video isn't. Dropping in a few days, don't miss it. Number 3. Amaro Nonino Quintessentia. Amaro is the category of Italian bitter liqueur that has quietly become one of the most talked about spirits among bartenders over the last decade. And Nonino is the bottle that comes up more than any other when you ask serious bartenders what they drink after service. Nonino is made in Friuli from a grappa base infused with a proprietary blend of herbs, roots, and citrus peel. It's lighter and more elegant than most Amari. Less aggressively bitter, more complex, with a sweetness that doesn't feel cloying. It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder why you spent so long drinking other things. The reason it rarely makes bar menus is partly category confusion. Most customers still think of Amaro as a digestive, a specific occasion drink, something you order at the end of a meal in a restaurant that has candles on the tables. Nonino doesn't fit that frame. It's too versatile. Bartenders drink it neat, over ice, in simple stirred cocktails, as a modifier in builds that most menus would never list. A bartender in New Orleans described it as the spirit she reaches for when she wants to drink something that rewards attention. The bar menu, she said, is for people who aren't paying attention. Nonino is for people who are. Number 2. Rittenhouse Rye, bottled in bond. This is the one that genuinely irritated me when I understood the full picture. Rittenhouse Rye BIB is a 100 proof, bottled in bond rye whiskey from Heaven Hill. It retails for around $25. It has been named one of the best values in American whiskey by virtually every serious publication that covers the category. It is, by any objective measure, one of the most overachieving bottles in any tier of the market, and it is almost never on a bar menu. Not because bartenders don't respect it. They respect it enormously. Every bartender I spoke to who mentioned rye mentioned Rittenhouse. It's behind more bars than almost any other American whiskey in its category. It's off the menu because bars make more money listing bottles that customers perceive as premium. Rittenhouse at $25 retail is a hard sell as a featured pour when you can list a rye that retails for $60, charge a corresponding premium, and let the customer feel like they're drinking up. The bar manager who was most direct about this said, "Rittenhouse is what I put in my Manhattan when I'm making it for myself. It's not what I put in the Manhattan on the menu because the menu Manhattan has to justify its price point and customers associate price with quality. Rittenhouse is too cheap to charge what it deserves." Read that again. Too cheap to charge what it deserves. That's the entire economics of a bar menu summarized in one sentence. The bottle that the person making your drink reaches for when they want a great rye is invisible to you because the math of the menu doesn't work in its favor. You're being charged more for something worse because the number on the retail bottle is higher. Every single time you order a rye Manhattan from a menu, that math is happening. Number 1. Chartreuse, green. Not yellow chartreuse, which has become well known enough to appear on menus with some regularity. Green Chartreuse, 110 proof, made by Carthusian monks in the French Alps from a recipe involving 130 plants and herbs that has been in continuous production since 1737. There are only 2 monks alive at any given time who know the full formula. The distillery still runs on equipment that hasn't been fundamentally updated since the 19th century. Green Chartreuse is the bottle that comes up in every single conversation with every serious bartender as the thing they drink when they want to drink something that cannot be explained. It's herbal and sweet and intensely complex and medicinal in a way that shouldn't work but does completely. It tastes like nothing else in existence. The reason it almost never appears as a featured pour on bar menus is partly its proof. 110% of customers who order it without preparation are going to have a reaction that requires explaining, and partly something more fundamental about what green Chartreuse represents to the people behind the bar. A bartender who has been in the industry for 15 years said this, and I wrote it down word for word. Green Chartreuse is the bottle I reach for when I want to remember why I got into this industry. Not for the money, not for the hours, because once in a while something comes along that you pour into a glass and you sit with it and you think, people have been making this for 300 years and it still tastes like it came from somewhere outside of anything you understand about how flavor works. He said, I don't put it on the menu because I don't want it to become an order. I want it to stay a conversation. So what do you do with all of this? The 7 bottles on this list have almost nothing in common in terms of category, origin, or price point. What they share is that the most knowledgeable people in the room, the people who have tasted everything, who have spent careers understanding what's in the glass, reach for these bottles when no one is ordering and nothing is being sold. That's information. It tells you that the bar menu is a commercial document, not a recommendation. It tells you that the best pour in any serious bar is almost never the one with the highest margin or the flashiest backstory on the cocktail menu. It tells you that the person standing across the bar from you knows things about what's worth drinking that they are not by default going to share with you. So change the default. Next time you sit at a serious bar, not a bar, a good bar, the kind with a bartender who clearly cares, don't open the menu. Look the bartender in the eye and ask them what they've been drinking lately. What's behind the counter that they'd pour for themselves right now? What they'd recommend if they were building the round for someone who wanted to actually taste something. Most bartenders have been waiting for someone to ask that question all night. The answer is never what's on the menu. Next video goes inside that conversation, specifically the exact words that get a bartender to reach past the menu and pour you something they actually care about. Dropping in a few days, this is Cask Index. We'll see you in the next one.